Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi mining community, welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest, who's actually a returning guest, who has appeared on the podcast twice before, back in December 2022 and in July last year, which was 2024. Those episodes were 298 and 451. Alex Walker is the CEO of E-Star Resources, and they're focused on the discovery and development of VMS, porphyry and sediment-hosted copper deposits in Kazakhstan. A former captain in the Australian Army Reserves, Alex has more than 15 years in investment banking, mining finance and management experience before joining E-Star Resources back in 2021. He's back on the podcast to give us an update since we last spoke. He's going to give us some updates on the drilling campaigns, ESG, and how Kazakhstan is developing as a mining jurisdiction and more. I just want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Hawcraft, who are leaders in property risk management within the mining industry since 1992. They offer insurance risk surveys, construction risk reviews, and asset criticality assessments and more. They work across 600 sites globally and support all areas of mining and mineral extraction. So if you're looking for any property and insurance risk management services, then please visit their website at www.hawcroft.com, and all the details are in the show notes. Alex, how are you? Welcome to the podcast again.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Rob. Thanks very much for having me on again.
No, appreciate your time. As I said, this is the third time that you're on. So for those that didn't listen or haven't listened to the previous episodes, I obviously encourage you to go and listen to them. But I wonder if you just give us a little bit of background about yourself. As I mentioned, you've come from you're in the obviously Australian Army Reserves, and also obviously from a finance background. So I just wonder if you can just walk us through your career up to present day.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Perth, Western Australia. Well, actually just south of Perth in a place called Mandurah. And I guess fell into mining finance, as a lot of people do in Western Australia. Lots of people fall into the mining industry generally. And so I worked for a company in Perth called Patterson Securities for about 6-7 years. And then I moved to London to run a London office for Patterson's, which has now been absorbed into Canaccord. So I worked in the London office for Patterson's for just over 18 months, and then moved to a local London boutique broking investment banking firm. Then I did Pareto Securities, which is a big Norwegian bank, for about a year. And during the course of that time, I set up my first small cap company, which was an ASX listed company called Scandi Vanadium. And that is actually what ended up driving us to Kazakhstan. Funnily enough, we were looking for additional sediment-hosted vanadium projects, and we did a top-down and bottom-up review of jurisdictions globally, the places that we thought had a really positive trajectory for mining investment and finance. And Kazakhstan came very, very high up on the list. So after our first visit, looking for a trend for that sediment deposit, which we knew of here, we found it, but it didn't really layer well enough to provide the thickness. But we did spend some time in various offices looking at other projects and got really, really excited by the opportunity. So we came another, I think 5 times that year in 2019. And the results of that, after negotiating on a number of projects and potentially bumming in and reviewing about 150 projects, we ended up applying for a bunch of licenses, which were the starting licenses for E-Star.
And obviously, you've moved out there with your family out to Kazakhstan. So before we speak about E-Star, I just wondering if you just tell us a little bit about yourself living out in Kazakhstan, what it's like, especially for our listeners that haven't been to the region. I just wondered what your thoughts are, having lived there for a few years now with the family, what it's like.
Yeah, it's great. I actually went to my son's graduation this morning from jet ski sad, which is kindergarten. So he turns 5 soon and will be going to a bigger school. And it was really cute because obviously they're all singing songs and everything's in Russian, and so he's becoming, not bad. He's certainly better than me. So it's good. Look, Kazakhstan's it's a fantastic place. It's an absolutely wonderful country. In fact, this week we had our directors here as well, and we were out to dinner with the team last night, and they were singing the praise of our staff and of the country as well. We've spent a lot of time in Almaty, which is down the south, beautiful mountains, go skiing several times a week well, certainly my wife does, in winter, and fantastic for hiking in summer as well. And so it's just a glorious place to be. The people are very welcoming, very, very friendly. It's quite a melting pot. It's a very diverse society that's come from generations of people being exported here, I should say, of being sent to Kazakhstan. But that's created a very a society which is very warm and welcoming, and with a lot of diversity, from ethnic Kazakhs to Russian heritage to German and Korean and so on. And certainly our friendship group here is quite diverse as well. And then I guess moving into the framework, it's definitely got some still remnants of Soviet era administration. So you would argue that it's quite a bureaucratic jurisdiction, but once you push through the paperwork, or you get the team set up that knows how to handle all of that, the application processes and the reporting and things which can be quite intense, you can operate really, really well. And when they changed their mineral law in 2018, which was modelled off Western Australia's, it became, certainly for us, one of the absolute top jurisdictions globally for exploration and development. And I think we've continued to see that level of support coming through from government, and that's resulted in a lot of other companies coming and investing in Kazakhstan. Since we started, Fortescue have come in, Barrick set up an office here, B2 Gold have set up an office, First Quantum have licenses, Ivanhoe's come in, and I think we'll see a few more this year. So yeah, we certainly picked the trend right, and it's just a fantastic place to be working and operating.
Yeah, great to hear. I wonder if you can give us an overview of East Star Resources, a little bit of history of the company, and what you guys are about.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, we started coming to Kazakhstan in 2019. That was part of an ASX company at the time. Obviously, COVID made some disruptions to lots of people's plans during that period, and we ended up doing a deal in Australia because we could get to the license and people would fund it. But I still was very, very besotted with Kazakhstan as a jurisdiction. I used to think of it as Western Australia, but in the 1970s or even earlier. And I don't mean that from a social development perspective. I mean it from an exploration perspective, just the sheer lack of work that's been put into exploring undercover and using new exploration techniques and new geological models to find deposits here. So I got really, really excited about the potential. And through the course of COVID, we worked through applying for the licenses, which thankfully we'd visited lots of those areas previously, and we collected a big database. And then in August of 2021, moved here with the family, which was a big call, as you said, big call for the wife. I knew how lovely it was, but my wife came sort of sight unseen, so I'll give her a lot of credit for that. And she settled in really, really well. And so we started with 4 licenses as a joint venture with Tauken Samruk, and since then our license package has grown and shrunk and changed. We're not here to land bank. We're not here to do anything other than do really good, really efficient exploration and hold on to the stuff that is going well and drop the stuff that isn't going so well. And so, we've continued that process over the last 4 years. At the start of last year, 2024, we were accepted into the BHP Explore program. And that really developed a couple of larger strategies for us, being copper porphyry and epithermal gold exploration and sediment-hosted exploration as well. So we've done some quite severe targeting work on those. I've always looked at those as quite big company targets. So if you have success in exploration, they can be absolutely fantastic, of course. but you need to find something big, and ultimately you're hoping for a takeout or a joint venture later on in the picture to help fund that development. So that came later in the picture. Before that, we had what I considered to be a lower risk, achievable approach to exploration, which was largely based around infrastructure-led exploration in the Rudny Altai volcanogenic massive sulfide belt. It's an area that has quite a lot of historic data and an area that has an extremely significant amount of infrastructure, power, water, rail, but also concentrators, several smelters, all within 100 kilometres. And they've been mining there since 1749. So you've got a really positive view on mining in the region. And you've also got tens of thousands of people that work in the industry and are highly qualified. And so for us, that was a really interesting area to do exploration, because your economic threshold for development is significantly lower. And so I think it's the perfect sort of cornerstone asset for a fledgling, explorer come development company.
Wonder if you can just give us any updates since we last spoke, and any obviously major developments. And we spoke just over nearly a year ago. So yeah, just wonder if you can just give us an update on progress since then.
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of the timing there, because I always try and put the framework together based on that. So if it was just over a year ago, we would have just announced our maiden JORC resource on the Vakuba project. So Vakuba is, I guess, it's our most advanced asset. It's 20 million tonnes at 1.2% copper, 1.5% zinc, and just under 0.3% lead. It's a VMS project, but it's VMS adjacent. It's hosted in sediments. It's potentially a turbidite flow or something along those lines. But the grades are very, very good for global copper projects, and it looks like it's open pittable. So we had how that started was we basically looked at tens of thousands of meters of drilling, hundreds of thousands of meters of drilling over that region, and looked in particular at the clusters of areas that we sort of had read that there were historical reports of potential deposits, and the areas of intense drilling. We went and looked at those areas, and then we digitized that data. And so we digitized the Vakuba area. We sent it to an independent consultant, which was AMC at the time, and said, look, do we talk about this? Do we do anything? Do we spend any money on it at all? Is this a deposit? And we want an independent view. And they came back with an emphatic yes to that, and had they did an initial mineral resource estimate, but then they converted it to an exploration target due to the fact that we didn't have the historic core. And then we set about demonstrating if that was correct, or confirming that historical data. So we drilled 6 holes in that first campaign. We did LiDAR topographic surveys, and we did a lot of geological traverses. And we found 70 of the 96 drill collars, which made up that mineral resource estimate. And we were therefore able to convert that to a JORC resource. I guess that was the precursor to what's happened since then. And so since then, we have progressed that license. We, at the end of last year, we did some additional drilling. We've got a thesis which is starting to prove correct, that the resource model we've got, no resource model is accurate, to put that one out there. But the resource model we've got, the issues we have with it are based on the fact that the geology would indicate that the resource is bigger than what we currently have. And so we now need to go out and demonstrate that. And the reason that's the case is often the drill spacing is too far apart, so the ore lenses don't connect. Or in some instances, we have holes where we didn't have the drill data, and therefore the resource geologists considered them barren. And so they've closed off the ore body, but inaccurately. And last year we drilled 5.1 meters at 1.43% copper, which doesn't sound like a standout result, but it is a result when it's in your open pit shell and you've just converted a giant section of from waste to ore. And so we continue to expect to do more of that. And that's the plan, in the coming months. On top of that, since we were here last year, we have developed or advanced two other targets in the Rudny Altai VMS belt, being Talovskoy and Rulika. Rulika is an old deposit, and Talovskoy is an old deposit and mine. And we've got some really prominent IP anomalies which are adjacent to those. They're very, very big. They're in the same rock packages as those two deposits / mines, and they're also which also happens to be the same rock package which produced two significant mines in the region, being Artemyevsky and Nikolovskoy, both of which are over 40 and 50 million tons at between 5 and 8% copper equivalent, depending on what sort of prices you'd like to use and recoveries for the other materials. So we've advanced all those. They're now drill ready, and we'll be starting those in the not too distant future. And the last thing we did was we participated in the BHP Explore program. And so that was fantastic for us. It really built the team out. Chris Van Wyk joined as our technical director. Tremaine Woods joined as our exploration manager. And we have done a huge amount of data analysis and reviewed porphyry prospects over more than 200,000 square kilometres. So that was a primarily desktop work that was done. And we did apply for 2 licenses. We soil sampled both. We dropped one, and we kept one because we've got a really interesting gold anomaly called Snowy that's sandwiched in between 2 historic gold mines. And so we're continuing to progress that now as well to try and make that a drill ready target for us in the not too distant future. So it's been I'd say it's been our biggest 12 months, Rob, but for the fact that we've got the next 12 months ahead of us, and we get to drill all these things and demonstrate if we've got, tens of millions more tons available to us, which we really hope to be doing literally in the next month.
What exploration techniques and technologies are you most excited about now? And are they changing your approach to what you're doing?
We're always reviewing what technologies are available, and we need to make them obviously applicable to the work that we're doing. In terms of new techniques and technologies, the most obvious ones that stand out are deep searching for ore, so things like magnetotellurics, and then also AI processing of data. So we're not looking for things that are super deep at the moment. So we've been using pretty traditional. The latest ones have come from pole dipole IP surveys. We've done heliborne EM and other things, but we're also using a better understanding of geological models to assess the quality of these targets. So that's things like lithogeochemical sampling, where we can get the fingerprint, if you want to call it that, the geochemical fingerprint of a unit, and then compare that to the other units in the area that have produced economic mines. And so things like that have really enabled us or assisted us with our targeting, certainly in the VMS. And of course, geochemical, an understanding of the geochemical footprint of a porphyry deposit is also really important these days in understanding if you've got a good porphyry target and where you might be in the system. There's a new piece as well in terms of spectral work. The spectral data has improved drastically over the last 5 to 7 years. And now you can get satellite imagery, which gives you about 280 bands in terms of light reflection and understanding what the style of alteration you're looking at. So now, instead of looking at a giant argillic alteration signature, which has been done in the past using Aster, you can now start to pick out really the high temperature parts of that alteration. So your porophilites and your dicites and your alanites. And so that is really, really helpful, A, for target ranking, but also B, in terms of saving you loads of time in the field, because instead of having to walk across a 15-kilometre long alteration anomaly, you can now go straight to the 800 metres of the really high temperature parts and look at the rocks there. And so you save days in the field and you save thousands and thousands of dollars. So for us, that's been, really fantastic for our porphyry work.
How is East Star incorporating ESG principles into their exploration? I suppose, especially in regions where developing infrastructure and governance is needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. We obviously haven't done much in terms of developing infrastructure. Part of the reason that it helps being in an infrastructure-rich region is if you don't have to build new facilities, then that's a massive footprint that you don't have. And so when you do look at the ESG sort of guidelines, you get a really good rating if you're toll treating, for example, or selling selling to a local concentrator or a local smelter. So purely from the fact that we're in a region which is so infrastructure rich, we will get, when we get to that point, I believe we'll get a very, very good environmental credit rating on that scale. From the social and governance perspective, I mean, certainly, we think that we do things quite well. Going through the BHP program, we realised that there's still a lot more that can be done, and so we've implemented new social policies, which we now do training with our team each year and so on. Big part of that is that every single person in East Star represents the company, especially the geologists who are out in the field regularly, and they have a really good understanding of that and a really good handle. And we get fantastic reports from the local villagers, and they get invited for bunyas on weekends and barbecues in the towns that we work in, which I think is great. From my perspective, I do go up to the sites regularly. I visit the local mayors at least once a year, usually several times a year. I tell them the work that we've been doing, and I tell them the work that we've been planning, and the reception we get is just fantastic. They really want the development. They always, there's two things they always say is, thanks, Alex, this is how much money you've paid into our social support system this year, which is an obligatory payment. But also they say, when are you going to start mining? And then the last thing they say, so three things, is usually thank you, because it's not regular that they get these updates from local companies. So we really want to integrate ourselves. We really want that social license to operate. We've certainly got it today, and we don't want to do anything to damage that.
How is Kazakhstan obviously developing as a mining jurisdiction? Obviously, you mentioned earlier on that there's obviously a number of companies, large companies coming into the area. And also, how have things changed since you arrived in the country 4 or 5 years or even longer since you arrived in the country?
Yeah, I would say it's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back scenario. I was actually a co-founder with a local company, and Aris, who's a Canadian company, of the Kazakhstan Chamber of Mines, and we set that up in order to monitor and promote exploration and mining in Kazakhstan. There was a lack of diversity in that level of representation, and since then we've had Rio Tinto join Fortescue, First Quantum, B2 Gold, Kaz Minerals, Zeramet, and a bunch of other big names. So we were really, really proud of that effort. And one of the things that the Chamber has done, as well as promoting the positive policy and promoting the industry, is actually also trying to prevent those those steps back. And I think that's one of the biggest issues for the industry. You're always looking at jurisdictions which are reclaiming mining operations, perhaps illegally, renegotiating on economic terms, changing the environmental codes or the licensing codes, and just making things generally more difficult. I would say that Kazakhstan hasn't done that. They did, in our first year here, they increased the royalty rate, but they haven't done that since then. And there's been a lot of talk of moving to a net smelter royalty from a mineral extraction tax, which is there currently. And that's by no means, it's been very much supported and promoted by the Chamber. So the things that have progressed is the digitisation of historical assets, the online filing of reporting and so on. So it used to be large paper applications, and now we do online applications. And so the transparency is good, saves on the paper, which is always nice. And it saves my hand from signing 1,000 documents, which is even better. And so there's been a lot of progress in those areas as well. It's never as fast as we'd like, but the fact that it's moving in the right direction is I would say it's probably one of the few jurisdictions globally that you could say is the case. And so we're really, really happy being in Kazakhstan, staying in Kazakhstan. I think it's going to continue in the right direction.
What are the next steps for Snowy?
For Snowy, we need to see if we can find a drill target. So, I need to discuss that ultimately with with my technical team. We've been out there. We've got a geochemical anomaly and we need to now get a potentially a geophysical anomaly, or maybe even just look at doing drill fences. It's something that we have not yet decided on the exact next step, and we need to figure that out. But I believe we'll be figuring that out in the next few weeks. We've actually got a chap who's been doing some additional consulting to us. I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning his name, John Dobe, and he was one of the principals at Barrick in terms of project generation. So he is as good as they come, I think, globally when it comes to generating gold targets. And he's going to be on site with us next week, looking at a number of projects and prospects, but Snowy as well. So we'll hope that his input will help give us some guidance and provide us with that exact strategy for those next steps.
In today's capital markets, how do you pitch for E-Star Resources to investors looking for value in junior explorers?
It's a good question. I mean, you can look at a couple of thematics. The easiest thing is to look at the thematics. You want to be in copper, you want to be in gold. Copper and gold are really obvious, I guess, at least for most people that do invest in the mining industry. For those that don't, it's easy for me to say, well, the gold price has been taken care of. I think that is just a product of the global economic environment. Copper, however, is situationally very different, and it's just the spring is compressing for copper. The smelters aren't getting enough concentrate. The treatment charges and refining charges have ticked negative again, and the Chinese inventories continue to tick lower and move to sort of 20-year lows. And so we're in this situation where the spring's being compressed, and very, very soon smelters will switch off because they can't keep paying to receive ore. Normally you get paid to do a job, not paying someone else to do a job. And so, that's going to compress the supply side drastically. While the demand side, even if it doesn't change, that's going to create a copper bull market. But from everything that we're seeing in the space of electric vehicles and AI development, the world is going to need serious infrastructure. The new oil is copper for that infrastructure. It's not anything else. The new oil is copper because we need that to decentralize the grids. We need that to build the data centers for AI processing, and we need that for the power generation for all of the plants and so on. So, copper is entering a multi-generational bull market, but we're not the only copper player out there. And so you then need to pick, what happens after that. Then I move into, be in the right jurisdiction. If you pick a great mine, but you can't get it permitted, then, you might not make a profit. If you pick a great jurisdiction, but the operating costs are escalating faster than the commodity price, then you also might not make the same profit. And so we think that Kazakhstan ticks that box massively as well. And then the last thing for us is really about risk reward. For us, we have a deposit that's got a JORC resource on it in an infrastructure-rich region, which has a very low economic threshold for development. We've not done a definitive feasibility study, so I can't tell you the economics of that today, but I can tell you that, all of the studies that have been done historically and all the work that we've done, we have no critical thresholds for development, nothing that is cause for concern, really only cause for upside for that deposit. And then we hope to deliver the additional upside through exploration success, both at Taloska, Rulika, our second and third tier targets after that, and hopefully Snowy as well. So that's your massive return aspect of it. But your security aspect in current value for money is we're probably trading at 10% of or 20% of a highly discounted valuation for Vancouver alone. And so we like to think that we're just a great value company who says what they're going to do and then does it. And, a little bit of exploration success on top of that could see pretty substantial returns.
Yeah. And lastly, what's the short to medium term outlook for E-Star Resources? And also if there's anything else you'd like to add to our audience.
Sure. Short to medium term is drilling. We'll be drilling within a couple of weeks, I expect, on site at our Rulika target. It's a kilometre long it's a kilometre wide by 1.5 kilometres long with two distinct trends. It sits a few hundred meters from grades intersections like 12.1 meters at 10.5% zinc and 4.95% copper. And it is big and it has depth extent. It's in the same unit as the deposit, and it's in the same unit as a mine that was producing for on and off for 200 years. That's 11 k's down the road. We'll then do the same thing with targeting Telovskoy, similar concept adjacent to a deposit in the same rock package and a really, really big anomaly. So that's our super short term. We're really, really excited by those targets. But the rotary lie detector is going to, give us the facts of whether or not they're mineralized and the extent to which they're mineralized. But if they are, then very, very soon we'll be significantly growing our resource base. On top of that, a few more infill holes at Vakuba, and we expect to continue to demonstrate that is better than our current resource model. So we would like that to grow. We'd like to do new optimized pit shells, and we'd like to start pushing that through scoping studies and into feasibility work. So I hope that we can do all of that this year. So it's going to be a big year.
Yeah. Alex, really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on the podcast, explaining or give us an update on what you've been doing with E-Star in the last 12 months. And obviously, good luck with the drilling programs that you've got happening soon. And obviously, give us an overview of Kazakhstan as a mining jurisdiction. And it seems it is underexplored, although there seems to be more and more companies and larger companies going into the country. So we look forward to hearing more about E-Star and Kazakhstan as a mining jurisdiction. If our audience wants to reach out to you and also obviously follow E-Star's story, how can they go about doing that, and what social media platform channels are you on?
We post on LinkedIn and X, and obviously our website is estarplc.com.
Yeah, we'll include those in the show notes for easy access, so our audience can reach out to you if they've got any questions, and obviously follow the story as well. So wish you well with the drill programs, and perhaps you want to come on later in the year or even next year and give us an update.
Talk about the discoveries.
Yeah,
on you, Rob. Thanks very much.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes far and wide. As Alex explained, obviously Kazakhstan, we haven't had too many podcasts speaking about Kazakhstan as a mining jurisdiction, although Alex has been on twice previously. So appreciate if you can pass this episode to friends and family and people within our industry, no matter where they are in the world. We want to educate the global mining industry with various educational, whether it's commodity, jurisdiction, company, or even technical strengths of the guests that come on. So thank you for listening, and until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.